everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I thought it'd be nice to get into the holiday spirit and draw a cute Christmas ghostie. And I figured that if I made it into a tutorial then we could all draw along together. Or if you just want to watch, you don't want to draw, that's fine too. I'm not the YouTube police. I'm not gonna break down your door and burst into your house and you're watching the video wrong. I am nowhere near motivated enough to do that, so don't worry, you're safe if you want to just watch. Okie dokie, so I'm just starting off by doing a simple sketch, just getting the placement on the page and the main details down. Just want to do a simple little ghost wearing a Santa hat, and I want to make him the ghost of Christmas pasta because I'm hilarious. And so he's going to be holding out a hand with a plate of lasagna. When I'm just sketching it out roughly, I just use the default airbrush, soft airbrush, at about 2 or 3%. And I have the drawing guide on. I like to have it 6 squares high because it's kind of tricky to do it 3 squares high. And that makes it easy to use the rule of thirds when you're putting everything in place. So now I'm just reducing the transparency of the sketch layer to about 20% or so, and I'll keep that layer on top and make a new layer below it to block in the colour. I have my own palette set up already, but you don't need that. You can just pick whatever colour you want to colour the ghost in. Sometimes I like to block the colour in by hand just because it's fun to colour in, but if you don't want to do that, you can go up to that third little menu and go automatic, and then you just tap on the screen and presto, colour fill. So now I'm just colouring in the other bits, the arm, which doesn't look like an arm to be honest, and the hat. And here's a handy thing coming up. If you draw a shape like a circle and you hold the pen down, it smooths it out, but then if you tap with your finger as well, it turns it into a perfect circle. And speaking of handy things, if you go into your drawing guide and go symmetry, you can actually make the screen mirror whatever you're drawing, not just vertically, but you can do it horizontally or in a quadrant. So if you're somebody like me who can't make things the same to save yourself, this is awesome. I don't really like to overuse tools like that, like the symmetry or the making a perfect shape, but I find them really good just to get the placement down, and then I can go over them and make things look a bit cuter and a bit rougher once they're in place. So I'm just doing a little bit of shading now, a little bit around the eyes, just so that it doesn't look so two-dimensional. It's really hard when you're drawing a cute ghost to make it look like a ghost and not a tooth sometimes, so I think that the shading is what does that. That arm is really not looking like an arm, you guys, I'm sorry. Let's just try to ignore that for now and talk more about shading. So you want the cute ghost to look like it's a ghost wearing a sheet basically, and so you need the kind of folds of the sheet, especially around the bottom. So yeah, that arm is just really bothering me. I've got to draw the plate of lasagna on there now so that it covers it up. It's just, I can't unsee it. And lasagna, I'm just doing like a pretty basic, just a line for a plate. Got some bechamel going on there, bit of tomato sauce. I really love lasagna. I just really love lasagna. I think that looks pretty good. I'd eat it. And now I'm just fixing up the arm a little bit more, trying to make it a little bit more PG and differentiating the colour of the plate from the colour of the ghost. And I think that doesn't look so bad now. So now I want to start adding a little bit of texture. I'm going to my favourite oil paint brush. This is one from a set that I've bought, but if you go into the painting folder in the Procreate brushes, the oil brush or the turpentine brush, either one of those will have a very similar effect. And I'm just layering up a few different shades to give the furry part a bit of depth. So I'm happy with how the hat looks now, so I'll flatten the layers You always have to be careful when you're flattening layers that you do it in the right order, because if you've used a clipping mask or an alpha lock and you do that, then you can make things look really weak. So now I'm just grouping together all the elements of the ghost so I can move him around as one whole thing, but still have all the different parts separate in case I need to do anything else to them. So I decided that this little ghost looks a bit too much like a tooth, and I want to change the bottom to make it look a bit more like a sheet, because ghosts aren't made out of teeth, they're made out of sheets. So I'm just trying to make it look a little bit more organic in the way that it drapes like a sheet, I suppose. And then I'm just adding slightly darker to the background on a separate layer which I have behind, so that it looks a bit more three-dimensional. So I've just put an alpha lock on that back layer, and I've put the airbrush down to 50% opacity so that I can make it a bit shady. And now I've got another layer on top of the main ghost layer and used a clipping mask so it doesn't go over the edges, and I'm just putting a little bit of shade in to make it look like there's folds in the fabric of the sheet. I'm basically just playing around here until something looks right, and then just expanding on it if it looks good and going back over it if it doesn't. So it's all just trial and error at this point to see what looks good. The main thing to keep in mind is that any folds that come forward are going to be lighter, folds that go back are going to be darker. If you want the folds to be bigger, then make the white spaces wider, and if you want more of them, then make them thinner. So basically just play around until it looks right to you. So now I'm just shading around the outside a bit. I'm doing this on a separate layer to the shading in the folds because I'm pretty happy with how I've got the folds at the bottom, and I don't want to mess that up if I decide I want to edit the shading around the outside. I find it's always better to have more layers than you think you'll need, because it's a lot easier to merge a layer than to separate a layer. And I find it really good practice when you're shading to do it with a bit of texture. So now I'm just playing around with different brushes to see what I like, what works for me. And I feel like when I'm working in Procreate, this is 95% of what I do, just test out different brushes. I need to stop downloading brush packs because I literally have more than I can deal with. It's overwhelming. I've tried to sort out my Procreate brushes and it just takes so long. Like I think, oh, should I delete this brush? Nah, maybe I'll use it one day. But then I've got literally thousands of brushes. And I seriously just use the few same brushes over and over. So for this ghost, I've decided that the crumpled paper texture looks really cute, but it doesn't matter if you don't have that brush. I'll link it in the description, but you could use literally anything. One of the paints, a pencil, halftone, literally anything. You don't even necessarily have to add texture if you prefer just the blocked in color. It's still cute that way. I just find that it gives it a bit more individual personality if you put a texture on it. But that might just be because I'm not great at that sort of graphic style of drawing. Now I'm just playing around with different paper textures and using them for shading, a bit of highlighting. It's easy for the detail you've already put down to get lost if you go a bit heavy with the texture. So I'm just trying to find that kind of balance where I'm not losing the folds that I put in the bottom of the sheet earlier to the creases in the crumpled paper. So while I'm doing that, it's probably a good time for you to hit that like button if you like this video, and if you haven't already subscribed and you want to see more of this kind of thing, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel. So now I'm just doing a few more tweaks to the shading just to get it to a point that I'm happy with, and kind of just fussing. But I'm still not entirely happy with that arm. Not so much with how it looks right now, but with the placement of it, it's up a bit high. So I'm just going to my select tool, freeform, and just selecting the arm. Then I'm going to the move tool and tweaking it just so that it looks a bit more natural. Then moving the lasagna. I really like lasagna. I know it's not a Christmas food, but it's an anytime food. But Christmas food's good too. Let me know in the comments what's your favourite Christmas food. Do you cook? Do you have somebody else cook? My nephew cooks, he's an amazing cook. He makes these duck fat potatoes. They are the most amazing thing ever. Every year he says, "What do you want for Christmas lunch?" And I say, "I don't care. As long as it's duck fat potatoes, I'm happy." So now I'm just going back in with the oil paint brush and making the hat a bit more fluffy, because it's a Santa hat, it should be fluffy. With things like that, I think it's good to have at least 3 different tones to give it some depth. This brush I find is really good for drawing hair as well, hair and fur. Whether you're trying to make it look more realistic or a bit more illustrative, I think that it works either way, which I guess makes sense because it's meant to be like an oil brush, and oil paint is pretty versatile, just very stinky. The Procreate brush isn't stinky. I'm fairly happy with the little ghostie now, so I'm just doing some decorations for the outside. I want to keep it fairly simple, so I'm just doing a few sprigs of holly. And I'm just using the soft airbrush again. And I'm using this nice yellowy green just so it stands out against the darker bluey background. And just so I don't have to redraw it every time, I just used the selection tool and selected the holly, went copy and paste, and it pasted into a new layer. And I'm just adding another leaf onto it so that it doesn't look exactly the same. And just adding a few more little details like the berries and some little leaf veins and that kind of thing. I think all those little details just make your picture look a bit nicer. And now that I'm quite happy with those, I'm just going to do another copy and paste. Just duplicate the layer, and if you click on the little green dot above the selection box, you get this little rotation calculator up, and you can be a bit more precise than if you just drag the cursor. And now I'm just arranging them all in a nice little sort of circular pattern around the ghost. And just adjusting some of the leaves using the distortion tool. I don't like to use the distortion tool too much because things can get crazy. But if you're just doing a few little tweaks to change the shape of something, then it's really handy. So I've just popped the drawing guide back on so that I can make sure all the holly sprigs are placed right. And now I'm drawing a little circle, and then I can do it a bit more precisely. And if you can hear a weird noise in the background, it is just my dog digging the bed. It's super hot here today. It's probably freezing cold wherever you are if you're not in Australia or the Southern Hemisphere. But here in Melbourne, it is warm. It's not nice. The dogs don't like it either. And it's going to be stinking next week. So gross. Have you ever had a summer Christmas? It's weird. Well, it's not weird for me. I've never had a winter Christmas except for one time I was in Japan, and they don't really do Christmas properly. They have Kentucky Fried Chicken. So anyway, it's kind of a bit hard to think of wintry Christmas things when it isn't feeling wintry at all. I'm sitting here in an ice vest. I was thinking about drawing these other little leafy things, but I couldn't get them to look right and they were just annoying me. So I was thinking about what other things are Christmassy, and I googled it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not really feeling Christmas this year, guys. I'm really just not feeling it. I don't know why, but candy canes, they're Christmassy. I ate a candy cane the other day and it went really sharp and it stabbed me in the gums, guys. It stabbed me. It tried to kill me. It was like, get in the Christmas spirit or else. And so I threw it in the bin and gave the rest of the packet to my sister. They didn't try to hurt her at all. I don't know if I just got a bad one or if they liked her better. Anyway, so I'm doing the same thing with the candy canes that I did with the holly. I'm just duplicating the layer, playing around with it a bit to make it look a bit different. Sometimes you can flip it, resize it. If you wanted to go really crazy, you could redraw it, I suppose. So even with the candy canes, I think it still looks a little bit bare. So I decided to add some snowflakes, but cute snowflakes that look a little bit like spider webs. I really like these snowflakes. I think they're super cute. I wish I had snowflakes right now. It would be less hot. Maybe I should manifest them. Oh my golly, you guys, I have just remembered that we have ice creams. They're basically snowflakes, right? They're like snowflakes, but delicious and on a stick. I just manifested that. I am like magical. So again, I'm just duplicating the layers and moving them around. They don't really need much in the way of resizing or rotating or anything to make them look different because, you know, they're snowflakes. They look like snowflakes. They're kind of round, kind of snowy, kind of flaky. And so it's nearly done. The last thing is the background. I decided to go with another paper texture, the same sort of crumpled thing I used on the ghost, and just turn the opacity right down. But again, a texture isn't even really necessary, or you could just use something subtle like a noise brush, or some of the Procreate charcoal brushes are amazing for texture. Just, yeah, play around, see what you like. And now I'm just changing the background color to make it a little bit more festive. And that's basically it. So let me know if you give this a go. And if you do, make sure that you tag me on Instagram or just leave a comment with a link. And I'll definitely check it out. Anyway, happy holidays, whether you celebrate or not. And I'll see you next time.